College Game Day, also live from Happy Valley at 9 a.m. Eastern on ESPN as we make way for Chris Fowler. What time or what day do you go in to start doing your prep work for these teams? Are you Zooming interviews now?
It's all via Zoom, Dan.
Wow.
Everything's on a screen and a little dot of a camera. Usually we go in much sooner. Used to go in on Thursdays, watch a practice, which we were allowed access to, which was a lot of fun. In-person meetings with the players, which is one of my favorite parts of the job. Now, no practice because of COVID restrictions, and everything's via Zoom. So I'm actually at home right now. We'll do Penn State's calls in a little while, then make the late journey to Happy Valley. It's all different this year.
We've talked about this before on this show about when you go in and you do an interview. Brian Griese, when he was sitting down with Nick Foles, and, what's on the record, what's not, and all of a sudden, Brian Griese saying, hey, Nick Foles told me that, coach has a hard time getting the plays in and all those things. Like, when do you know what is on the record and off the record when you're in these meetings, maybe in person with these coaches or players?
That's a hard question. I mean, I think that they're going to be pretty guarded. So do you feel like, unless they tell you, hey, don't say anything, we feel like it's good for the broadcast. I mean, I think it's very different. If I'm going to tweet something out or Kirk's going to put something on game day, Saturday morning, that's a very different level of confidentiality than, hey, hold something until kickoff, or don't say anything until you see it during the game. Like, you might hear something in a meeting, wait till the kickoff, and then say, hey, they were working on that fake field goal a lot this week in practice. Well, now you've just alerted the team. It's not like they can't be aware of what's said in the broadcast, right? So there's some of the stuff you just hold until you see it. But we want to maintain the trust because that's an important part of it.
Best coaches to sit down with that actually really gave you full access or as much access as anybody?
Well, I don't know if it's the best, but one of the most surprising is Saban gives us great access. And he's got the reputation for being very, very tough with the media. But over the years, we've done so many Alabama games. I covered him back at Michigan State and LSU. So there's a good trust built up with our team and him. We are allowed inside the Palace gates. We see Alabama's walkthroughs and practices before playoff and championship games, which is awesome because it's very, very helpful. Like when they did the surprise onside kick in that game against Clemson, I had seen them practice that for 2 games ahead of time. And you wonder, why are they working on an onside kick? Like, that's not an Alabama thing. But when it happened, I was ready for it because we've been allowed inside. And Saban will usually talk about kind of what the Tua filling in at halftime for Jalen Hurts in the championship game, because he was pretty forthcoming in the meetings with us and allowed us to press him on it. It didn't shock Kirk or myself when Tua was put in there in the championship game against Georgia. So he's one of the best, and that might surprise you. There are a lot of them who say nothing. I'm telling you.
How do you know when you can press a coach?
Good question. I mean, you have to have a history with them. If they don't know you, I mean, being around the sport for 32 years, whether or not I've done a lot of a team's games or not, they're pretty familiar with game day. There's usually some goodwill built up, or there might be some bad will. I've had some ill will built up with coaches because of stuff you say on a pregame show over the years that they didn't like. And now is their chance to let you know that, or just let you feel that. But yeah, you definitely, it's just like any interpersonal communication. You kind of sense, hey, let's not go a bridge too far here because we've gotten as much out of this as you can. 2 swings and a miss. I don't usually go for a third swing, right?
With what happened with Wisconsin and Nebraska, like, how deep does this go, you think, with affecting Wisconsin's season and as a result, the other teams in the Big Ten?
Yeah, the 21-day sit out in the Big Ten, as you well know, you've been all over this story, is far different from the other conferences, right? So the price that Mertz will pay at Wisconsin is different than what Trevor Lawrence is going to have to deal with at Clemson, assuming he comes back and isn't an ongoing situation. Could still cost Lawrence the Notre Dame game. But yeah, I mean, the Wisconsin-Michigan game is what's sitting out there, major showdown game. And I think it's going to affect the Wisconsin players for that. Here's the deal in the Big Ten. They just had no margin for error. There were no bye weeks to slide these games into. That's why that game is postponed and not rescheduled. And when the Big Ten presidents were sold on coming back, again, you probably know this, but they were sold that with daily antigen testing, they felt like they could be almost 100% or 100% able to prevent it from running through a team. Now, I don't know how you sell that 100% in this day and age with what's unknowable, but I think that they were surprised that there was an outbreak this early in the Big Ten season that would cost a game. I unfortunately don't think we're done with that in any league. So,
and I was told last night that Michigan and Ohio State were backing Nebraska to be able to schedule this game with Tennessee Chattanooga because they know they could be in a situation similar where they may lose an opponent who can't play, and they want to make sure that you spice up that resume because, in particular, Ohio State wants to play for a national championship, and if all of a sudden you're playing 5 games or 6 games, that's going to have certainly an adverse effect on that site test that they would get into the Final Four, wouldn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, I think you have to be really good every week out and be prepared to only play 6 games, 7 games. And I've always said the schedule is a best case scenario, and that goes for every single conference. Now, if all the contenders are nicked up, if there's asterisks through all of their schedules, it may even out. But, Ohio State, for example, they're playing, at Illinois late in the season. I worry about these teams letting their guard down once their goals are shot, right? When they're not playing for something, all the protocols, it's tough. The isolation mentally on these players, it's tough on all of us, right? It's tough on all college students, especially, and it's tough on players. And, if your goals are shot and you're playing for Illinois, I'm not to say that they won't do the right thing, but that's just an example of a late season game. If they can't feel the team or they got too many positives and Ohio State can't play them, I mean, it's not going to help their case, that's for sure. They better look good when they have a chance.
He's Chris Fowler, ESPN college football and tennis host as well. They've got Ohio State and Penn State coming up on Saturday night. Indiana over Penn State. We've come up with a new stat, Chris, game-losing touchdowns. Penn State had a game-losing touchdown. Todd Gurley had a game-losing touchdown. What do you think of that stat?
I love it. I mean, I think it's one of those deals where it's easy to blast the player, but the coaches I talk to say it doesn't matter how many times you tell a guy that. I guess it's less forgivable in the NFL, but in college, a guy fighting the instinct to score there, very young player, falling down at the 2 is what you're supposed to do. They told him again and again, but you forget. I think the bigger concern is you look at teams unable to sort of finish off games they should win. Yeah. And this didn't fall into that category. But Penn State fans, one of the things that's been frustrating is that you look at the games they've had leads in the fourth quarter of not a blowout where it's hard to lose the lead, but let's say it's a 9-point or less lead in the fourth quarter, right? And that's been called kind of a save opportunity. That's happened 28 times, and 11 games have slipped away in that situation going back to 2014. That's a lot of blown leads in the fourth quarter. And they've had some close losses to Ohio State. They've been the one team in the league that's been able to hang with Ohio State. The loss to Indiana, it shakes people up because it makes this a virtual elimination game for them. Yeah. But they dominated the game. I'm just watching the replay of it right here. I mean, the defense was great until the last drive in regulation. The offense self-destructed a bit, but they moved the ball up and down the field. They were better than that result indicates. And they got to be a lot better than they are in that game against Ohio State.
And speaking of Ohio State with Justin Fields, I remember having Herbie on a couple of months ago, and I said, who do you like going into the pros, Justin Fields or Trevor Lawrence? And he said he liked Justin Fields. Now, I know there's an Ohio State bias, but his kids go to Clemson. So. Well, maybe just a little. Maybe just a little.
I got to defend my guy there.
But his kids go to Clemson. Do you really think that he thinks Justin Fields would be a better pro quarterback than Trevor Lawrence?
I don't know what he thinks. I mean, I think they're both great prospects. I mean, Fields has improved his footwork. He throws a beautiful looking football. Trevor's Trevor. I mean, if you look at the Ohio State game last year, he takes a shot. He looks like he's going to be knocked out for like a month, comes back in the game, wins it, 65-yard run against a good defense last year. I don't know what else he can do. I don't know how you can be a better looking prospect than Trevor is, but Fields is right there. I agree with him, because what he can do, running the ball.
But if there's a blowout, Chris, here's a topic for you. You can bring it up to Herbie during the game.
Yeah, I will bring that up because Ohio State fans would like to hear what he has to say. If that's it. I mean, it's hard. Listen, Dan, I get asked this stuff all the time. I got no freaking idea about Sunday readiness. Like I don't know who the best prospect is. There's guys who get paid a lot of money.
I know. Whose
livelihood depends on making these judgments, and they're wrong a lot.
I know.
So why is somebody who covers college going to know? I don't know.
But
the guy Eisen gets me. We come to the draft. Who's going to be I don't know who's going to be the better pro. I'm going to watch him because I'm a fan of guys on Sunday who I saw play on Saturday, but I don't know who's going to be better. I mean, Burrow, I think we knew was going to be a pretty good pro. I'll say that.
But how do you know when somebody is milking you for information to bet?
They're usually pretty transparent. And then it's easy to say, I got no idea there too, but who you got? Who do you like?
Oh, yeah, who do you like?
Yeah.
Who do you like?
Man, do announcers hate that question. Man, the reason why my podcast is entitled Who You Got is because I saw John Madden get bombarded with that question 100 times way back when I was a college student trying to hang around him while he was shooting a commercial at Boulder. And people, hey, John, who you got? Who do you like? His mood went from crusty to dark because he just hated that question. And I filed that away. Never ask an announcer, hey, who do you like?
Yeah.
And I try to avoid that. But you get it all the time. I'm sure you do too.
I got it from Pete Rose in the 1986 NLCS with the Astros and the Mets at Shea Stadium. I'm with Bob Costas. And we're standing near the top step, and Pete walks by and he goes, who do you like? And Pete was betting through, he placed some bets through the bookie that I used to bet through in Ohio, and I knew exactly what he was doing. And Bob and I looked at each other, and when Pete left, and we just knew Pete was going to place a bet right then. No matter what we said, he was going to place a bet, but he goes, who do you guys like today? And I knew I'm like, I got to like the Mets. They're at home. And I don't even think Bob answered him. And then Pete probably went and placed a bet. Probably took the Astros.
That's a great story. I can see Bob not answering for sure. But Pete would like to make a bet in the fourth inning, right? He'd come back in the clubhouse.
Safe travels there to Happy Valley. And thanks again for joining us, Chris.
It's a short trip, Dan. Keep your fingers crossed.
Oh, wait a minute. The Clemson starting quarterback, now that Trevor's out, how do you pronounce DJ's last name?
Uyangalale. DJ Uyangalale.
Wow.
Good luck with that.
Uyangalale.
Uyangalale.
Yeah. Well,
I try to avoid it. Like I had to say it a couple times because he got in the game when we did a Clemson game, which was a blowout. I'm like, and Kirk was just like syllable by syllable. It took him 5 seconds to say the name. We just call him DJ. Just call him DJ. That's what everybody's going to call him, right?
Just call him AEIOU. It sounds like you're trying to, sound out the vowels.
It's a tricky one for sure.
Well, we got Tua's, so we can get this one. We got some time on this one.
You do.
Thank you, Chris.
See you, Dan.
That's Chris Fowler. He's got the game coming up on Saturday night. Ohio State against Penn State. Kickoff is at 7:30 Eastern.